all units proceed to your post assignments. All units proceed to your post assignments.
A global conflict between nuclear-armed powers would mean death and destruction on a scale unmatched in human history. It would be nuclear Armageddon. Nothing is more important than avoiding that nightmare.
Do we have our presidential candidate? Is he singing your song? He's singing your song.
Right. Well, it's not just that. I mean, look at the precedent set. North Korea just fired an ICBM nuclear arm that can reach the United States. They've revamped their entire nuclear posture for preemptive nuclear strike. The situation on the Korean Peninsula is more dangerous now than it's ever been in history. Why? Because Joe Biden didn't have the courage to pick up the football of denuclearization that Donald Trump was trying to take across the goal line. He's the only American president who actually sat down, had face-to-face meetings with Kim Jong-un to get rid of nuclear weapons, and he would have succeeded had it not been for two American traitors, one named Mike Pompeo, the other named John Bolton, who stabbed this president in the back. We could today be dealing with a peaceful Korean Peninsula with a peace treaty, economic interaction, and no nuclear weapons. But that's not what we have because Joe Biden's an idiot. So now Donald Trump is up there. He's saying the right things, but there's a reason why Donald Trump's not president today, and that's because there's a lot of baggage that goes along with him. So, this will be interesting.
It will be interesting because he's got an issue now. He's got an issue now, and this is it. He's he's pushing this.
Well, it's a good issue. It's a good issue. Yeah.
It's a really good issue, and no matter what you think of Trump, it's a great thing that he's going to inject this issue into.
Absolutely, the fact that he's going to mainstream this issue is great because now everybody look. Regardless of what you think of the guy, he's the pace setter. There's no one else out there that and stand up face to face right now that has more presidential pool than Donald Trump. Now, who knows? The brace could change. It's early, but everybody knows who the man to beat is, and it's Donald Trump.
Today, this proxy battle in Ukraine continues. We risk global war. We must be absolutely clear that our objective is to immediately have a total cessation of hostilities. All shooting has to stop. This is the central issue.
Well, there's wishful thinking. Or what? That's always my question with Donald Trump. Or what? Then you threaten to nuke him? Because that's what he did, in the past, fire and fury with North Korea. And stuff. I mean, that's just.
That didn't sound to me like he was making a threat. That sounded to me like he was saying that's the goal.
Yeah, but then there's the question, or what?
Yeah. Yeah, I got more.
Finally, we have to finish the process we began under my administration of fundamentally reevaluating NATO's purpose and NATO's mission. Our foreign policy establishment keeps trying to pull the world into conflict with a nuclear-armed Russia based on the lie that Russia represents our greatest threat. But the greatest threat to Western civilization today is not Russia. It's probably, more than anything else, ourselves.
Okay,
who does he sound like?
I could not have written that speech myself. It was brilliant. So
we've been getting a lot of viewers, and maybe one of them is Donald J. Trump. That sounds remarkably similar.
Yeah, I think he lifted one of my podcasts. That son of a gun, Jeff. We need to get a lawyer. We need to start a suit immediately. No, look. That's music to my ears. To be honest, I mean, frankly speaking, you put those three attitudes together: nuclear disarmament, the end of Russophobia, and rethinking NATO to the extent of getting rid of NATO. That's the three biggest issues that somebody could come up with right now. And the fact that Donald Trump's saying it, that makes him a front runner.
All right, there you have it. I knew that I'd win you over with those clips.
I don't like you, Jeff, but but I mean, my God, that last one. Literally, I swear to God, I said that earlier this week. I said that I've been saying.
I know. You always say it. It's not just yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Scott just added a new event. Go see him March 25th in Washington, D.C. And you can get the specifics at scottritterextra.com/uncanceled. All our event info is there.
I'll be speaking on disarmament. One of the 3 things that Donald Trump should be listening to me about.
Should we invite him to the event? Is there room for Secret Service personnel and Trump and everybody?
Well, and his parole officer.
All right. And then we're going to be in Texas at the end of the month on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. The first one there is at a private residence, but it's open to the public. We're just having it at a private residence, and then a couple of others at a brewery and a bar. And we are making new friends every which way and expanding the peace movement to the point where it might actually exist. What do you think about them apples? All right, Scott, should we go to the questions from our beloved audience? This is Ask the Inspector every Friday night. We call it the loquacious version because as compared to our Tuesday version, we take our time. Scott is a bit more expansive, and that gives me an opportunity while he's pontificating. That's not a negative word, is it? To take a sip of wine every so often?
Well, can I insert one thing?
Knock yourself out, Scott.
Thanks, Jeff. Have another sip. I'm here for you. Is that a wine glass, by the way, that you're drinking, or what is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It looked distorted. It looked like it was a solid piece. I thought you were drinking wine out of a honest to God beer mug, but okay, you're sophisticated. We'll give you that.
Who do I hear laughing? Somebody laughing?
You did hear laughter, yes, from Voldemort. But
all right,
Daniel Ellsberg, our good friend Daniel Ellsberg. We just wanted to put some thoughts out there each week to remember him while he's alive. Mm-hmm. And let me just say that today I had cause to reflect on Dan, and Maureen and I talked about it. He when I was sent on my all expense paid vacation to Pennsylvania, he reached out to my wife on several occasions just to ask how she's doing. That's what a friend does. Daniel Ellsberg is, above all else, he's a friend. He's the greatest of all time when it comes to whistleblowers. I don't like that term, but that's what he was. And what he did was historic and courageous. But it got me to reflect on something. I think we played the clip last week where he was going to court, and someone said, "Are you willing to go to jail?" And he said, "Who wouldn't be willing to go to jail in order to stop a war?" And I had to, I thought about that because some people have, likened, Ellsberg also talked about the role that the Espionage Act played. He was big, that the Espionage Act was an end around free speech and things of that nature. And when I started speaking out, I don't think a lot of people know, but I was charged under the Espionage Act. I was married to a White, who, if you study the Southern District of New York, she's the famous terrorist hunter and traitor and spy hunter, and everybody she put her sights on went to jail. And a guy named David Kelly was an FBI officer who ran the investigation. So the 2 biggest dogs in the administration came after me, charged me with espionage. It carries a death penalty. We're not talking about minor stuff here. They, found guilty, you're going to die. And it was all a setup. It was exactly what Dan Ellsberg had warned about, that, it could be used to silence people. But I reflected on, his stance, which was he'd be willing to go to jail to stop a war. And I said, well, wait a minute. The difference is I resigned first and spoke out first and then had the Espionage Act thrown at me. He had the Espionage Act and then spoke out. And that made me think, would I have had that courage? That's a tough question. If I knew then that everything was going to happen to me, everything was going to happen to me and my family, would I have had the courage to say, I'm going to do it anyways? Wouldn't you go to jail or wouldn't you subject yourself for this? And I have to be honest. I don't know what the answer is. It's a coin toss. I mean, I'd like to believe that the answer would be yes, but really, after everything we've been through, would I have preferred not to go through any of that and live a normal life? And because it was a futile effort, it turns out it was a futile effort. I didn't stop a war. All I did is beat my head against a brick wall. But the courage of Dan Ellsberg, I mean, it's remarkable. You know, a lot of people compare me to him, but I'm here to tell you right now, his courage was proven, demonstrative, you know, no questions. Mine, I mean, I think I.
Well,
I think
I mean,
but
the possibility of going to prison is a big deal and would weigh heavily on anyone's mind. But in each individual situation, though, I think what comes into it is how likely do you think it is? Now, I guess we can't get inside Ellsberg's head to know how likely he thought it was. But do you think that I mean, I know that he was sincere and he was ready to go, but do you think that maybe part of him was thinking, well, he's got a good chance to beat it?
I don't know. I mean, that's a fair question to ask him. I know that when I was told that I was the target of Mary Jo White and David Kelly, and they were charging me with espionage, that you know, on the one hand I was incensed, you know, just furious, and the other hand was I was, you know, let's go to war. That's what I told my lawyer, because he's like, well, you know, they want to cut a deal. I'm like, there is no deal to cut. I didn't commit a crime. We're going to war. And he's like, going to war could mean you're dead. And I'm like, then let them execute me. But you know, that's all courageous talk until you after the fact you're like, well, they tried to execute me. They tried to do all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's tough. But I just, the ring to bring it up is not to talk about me. It's to talk about Dan Ellsberg.
Right.
And how.
No, I understand that, but you know, he you know, his part of his legacy is that he's inspired people like you, and you're thinking about him. And I know he thought very highly of you. You mentioned when you went to your all expense paid vacation. I was in touch with him then. You know, I was reaching out to different people to try to get some support to rally around you. And what you just said is exactly what I experienced. Out of everybody I talked to, he was the one who expressed the most concern and did it in a really warm way, like he really cared.
No, good man, good man.
Yeah, he thinks very highly of you. You know that.
Well, no, I know that, and but you know, it's a mutual admiration society.
All right. Well, we said that we would pay tribute to him on an ongoing basis while he's still alive. And while I was poking around the internet last night looking for some video, I didn't really find anything that I thought was great, but we just paid tribute to him this way, so this will suffice. But this shows you how suddenly it can hit, because I found, while I was poking around, a couple of very recent interviews with him, and I was shocked at how energetic and clear-headed and articulate he was. It didn't seem like he was sick at all. This was just like within the last couple of weeks. Wow. All right.
Pancreatic cancer is it's a bad thing. Yeah.
The luck of the draw. All right, let's go to the questions from our beloved audience. You can submit them in advance at scottritterextra.com. And we take some live questions also towards the latter part of the podcast. The fabulous Ricardo, one of our greatest supporters, checking in. Thanks for the donation. Also, Ricardo made a video. A lot of folks are always asking us what, if we have any advice on good sources that are out there for information and how to verify things. So he made a video that addresses exactly that issue. And it's on our YouTube channel. I think it's called Tips and Tricks. So we'll go to the U.S. Tour of Duty YouTube channel, and you can check out that video. Thanks for doing that, Richie. Lebanese in Russia, Stavropol, Russia. In the context of regime change, what's the difference between Russia not accepting Ukraine to be hostile towards it with NATO backing, and Saudi not accepting Yemen to be hostile against it with Iranian backing?
Let me try to decipher.
Trick question.
Yeah, I got to reread it because I don't quite understand. What's the difference between Russia not accepting Ukraine to be hostile towards it? That part I don't understand. With NATO backing, and Saudi not accepting Yemen to be hostile against it with Iranian backing. Well, we'll just start with the root cause. NATO expanded, sought to expand in Ukraine, knowing beforehand that that action could trigger a war. So right off the bat, NATO knows that its actions could trigger a war from Russia, and then NATO proceeded to get involved in a coup d'état in Kiev in February of 2014, and then NATO played a role in putting together what was fake diplomacy, the Minsk Accords. We know that France and Germany and Ukraine all viewed it as a sham to buy time, and the United States, the NATO member, built a training camp, or at least took a training camp and expanded on it, opened it up in early 2015, and continuously trained Ukrainian forces from then until 2022 for the sole purpose of going east and fighting Russians in the Donbass. So I don't understand the question, not viewing Ukraine. Ukraine is a threat because it is a proxy of NATO, straight up proxy of NATO. So there's that. Saudi Arabia and Yemen, because I think they're trying to say, Russia invaded Ukraine, Saudi Arabia invaded Yemen. Yemen didn't attack Saudi Arabia, guys. Yemen wasn't conspiring with Iran prior to this. In fact, the Houthi, if anybody studies this kind of stuff, the Houthi are actually a sort of a offshoot of the Shia faith, but the Shia can consider them to be, sort of like non-believers. They're sort of heretics. So it's not like the Houthi are right in there with their Shia brother. They're sort of considered to be an offshoot and such. So it's not like Iran was whispering in the Houthi ear, "Hey, let's cause trouble." What happened is there was internal unrest in Yemen, and the government that was sort of pro-Saudi. And again, we got to go back in history here, where the Saudis invade Yemen, the whole history of the Saudi invasion, how Yemen was there were two Yemens. They united, the Saudi influence. So the Saudis have been sticking their fingers in Yemen forever. There was some unrest, and the pro-Saudi government got kicked out. So the Saudis invaded Yemen to put their boy back in power. That's what happened. Saudi Arabia invaded Yemen to put their guy back in power. Russia didn't invade Ukraine to put their guy back in power. Russia invaded Ukraine to prevent this NATO army from attacking people. So there's literally no linkage between the two whatsoever. None. Saudi Arabia is wrong. Russia's right.
All right. That was a trick question. So I'm going to give you an easy question now to make up for it. At least I think it is. Dragan from Serbia, tell us the story about the flight school that you started on Dave's podcast.
The flight school was a Naval Aerial Observer School. It's basically a school. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a unique school at the time. OV-10 Broncos were the aircraft of choice. That's a twin turbojet aircraft. A unique-looking aircraft.
Odious.
But it outperformed any aircraft that existed in World War II. So if people are like, well, it's just a prop plane, you take a Messerschmitt 262, you take the P-51 Mustang, you take anything, the OV-10 outperformed it, could shoot them all down, had better aerobatics, the whole thing. But it was a light observation aircraft. And the purpose of it was to be a forward observer or aerial observer for artillery strikes, naval gunfire strikes, close air support, to do reconnaissance, radio relay, photo reconnaissance, visual reconnaissance, electronic reconnaissance, whatever. We could do everything. The pilot flew the airplane. It was a dual control airplane. Pilot was in the front. The guy in the back is the aerial observer, and he does everything else. He's calling the airstrikes, and sometimes you're doing it all because this was combined arms. So you're getting ready to pop in, fire a Zuni smoke down there to get aircraft coming. While you're doing that, you're also in contact with the artillery because you're doing suppression of enemy air defense. So you're hitting the artillery first. You got to lift the artillery. You pop, air comes in, the artillery comes down, and you're coordinated all on the radio while the pilot's trying to get you to puke. The greatest thing in the world. It was just the best thing in the world. But the story I tried to tell is that I wasn't supposed to go to flight school. That's the whole thing. I was an intelligence officer, And normally they'd like to get the artillery officers in there. But I was unique in that when I got to the artillery battalion, I asked to be cross-trained so that I could understand artillery better. So at first they trained me in the fire direction center so I could sit there and do scheduled fires and participate and plan how to do a schedule of fires and all that. And then I went out and I learned how to become a forward observer so I could actually sit on the hill and call in strikes and run the war. And then with all that, I was trying to come up with different ways to use artillery smartly. And myself in the, I didn't say it was World War II, Victus. I said it was better than any World War II aircraft. I know the OV-10.
Don't be odious, Victus.
You know, so don't tell me about the airplane that I flew in. But the we were trying to get innovative because the artillery, when I first came into the artillery battalion, we were still doing schedule of fires like it was the Vietnam War, like it was World War II. Seriously, the textbook that I was operating off of was a World War II artillery textbook. And so we were getting into maneuver warfare at that time. So the idea is how can we shoot, move, communicate, and do all this stuff smarter? And my job was to collect intelligence on the enemy. So I had to look at the tools. One of the things we had were radars. And you see them, they're used in Ukraine a lot, the Q-36, Q-37 counter battery radars. Well, we had them, but they just bring them out, they put them there, and they'd sit there and they'd do nothing. And I said, well, that's not how war is going to work. We need dedicated counter battery fire. We're going to bring in our radars. We're going to work them in teams, turn them off when, some are going to be turned off. Others are going to be maneuvering in a new position. The other one's going to be on. And then we'll switch it, swap it. And how do I make all that happen so it gets communicated to the fire direction center so that when the enemy fires an artillery round, the Q-36 radar picks it up, sends the data back where the thing fires so we can kill it. So we're doing all that. And then I bring in drones. Today everybody's talking about drone warfare. Back then, nobody used drones. And I'm looking at it saying, that thing's going out there and it's going to see the enemy. And they have a camera. And if I can get that camera feed into my fire direction center so I can see the enemy, I can adjust artillery onto the enemy. And back then there was no GPS. And so this was old school map work, charting out time of flight and all that stuff. But we practiced. We got that drone out there. But now the question is, all this collection that I'm doing, all this communicating, the Marine Corps wasn't ready for it. So me and my staff sergeant went out to the Mojave Defense Logistics Agency, and we just went around all the radio. That's where they, like when the military orders radios, let's say they order 100 sets, 70 sets go to the units, 30 in reserve. But when they get a new radio, that 30 just goes straight to Defense Logistics Agency, where it sits there and civilians can buy them if they want to. And we went in there, and because the Marine Corps is always like 5 generations behind the Army, they had all the new Army stuff in there. Newer than the newest. This is the old Army stuff that's newer than the newest Marine Corps stuff. So we go in there, we just start deciding, we go, let's take some of this, let's take some of this, let's take some of this. Now we have all these radios, but now we have to put them in something. Well, we had a Humvee. They had just come out. Before we used the old Jeep. Yeah, M151, going back to World War II. Now we have the Humvee, but we have to outfit it. So I ended up calling up General Motors, or is it General Motors, or was it I don't know, whoever made the Humvee out of Michigan. I called them up and I said, how do we modify the back of this, get in the electronics? And I talked to them, and I flew out there and I met with them, and they gave me diagrams and everything. And we came in, and Sergeant Kopus and I are sawing wood and building this crap, putting in the radios, making it all work. And off we go into the middle of the desert, and we're testing it, and it's working like a champ. I mean, this stuff is working. Ring, ring, ring. The phone back at the general's office back in 29 Palms. Hello. Yeah, this is Headquarters Marine Corps. We got a bill here from General Motors for about $1.2 million. For what? Who's Scott Ritter? Or who's Lieutenant Ritter? And why is he allocating millions of dollars? Who gave him the authority? Like, we don't know anything about it. Then another phone call rings from a research and development site. I went up to get radios to talk to each other, and they built a special circuit, a unique circuit to get Army radios to talk to Marine radios, because remember, I got those Army radios. And it worked. Everything's working. But they sent a bill, too, for a couple $1 million. And so I'm out there, and all of a sudden I get the phone call. It's my battalion commander. Get in here. And I said, well, what do you want? He goes, you're going to jail because you basically broke every law in the world, and you're going to jail. I said, but boss, it's working, boss. Everything's working. He said, I know, and we'll explain it to the general. But if you stay here, you're going to jail. What we're going to do with you instead, we're going to send you to flight school. You're going to disappear. And so I had to go, and I went down to North Island and went to flight school. And for 6 months, I learned how to do all this fancy crap. And it was great because when I came back, I became the air officer for the battalion too. And I brought in more airplanes around the world to fight with our guys. I mean, at one point in time, I brought in so many aircraft that the commanding general of the Pacific Fleet, the number one guy in the Pacific, called up and said, who's running this big exercise in 29 Palms? And they're like, Lieutenant Ritter. Why in God's name is a lieutenant bringing in hundreds of airplanes costing millions of dollars? Well, the answer is because I could, because I would go to the air tasking conference and wait until everybody asked for air. They'd have all this extra air out there. And if you don't task it, then the pilots literally are, because they have to get in their flight hours. So they're literally taking off and they're drilling holes in the sky and landing. And I'm like, you guys don't want to take off and drill holes in the sky. Come play with me. Come to my playground. And we're throwing artillery out there. They're dropping bombs. We're fighting like it's really supposed to be. And we did all the stuff you're reading about today that's going on in Ukraine, about drone warfare, about counter batteries, about radars and all that stuff. I invented that crap.
Wow.
I invented that crap as
you're telling the story, all these questions are popping into my head, but I don't want to take too much time away from our audience. But just real quick, why is the Army ahead of the Marines as far as new equipment goes? Is there a good reason for that or a bad reason?
The Army's bigger than we are. And most of the time we the Army takes the lead in research and development of major weapon systems, including communications. So generally what happens is the Army will do the testing and development, and then they'll procure it and they'll get it all into the Army. Meanwhile, the Marine Corps is back there, waiting our turn. And so we were literally using, when I came in, we were basically using this phone with wiring you. And so the way you get the new guy like me, they'd say, hey, Lieutenant, yeah, hold these two wires. Okay. You get shocked. They have a good time doing that. But,
okay.
So we were using all the old stuff, including the old radios, but that's just the way it is. Today it's better. The Marine Corps actually has its own research and development. We're out there developing weapons or communications that are for the Marines, for our unique requirements. But it was the best time. I have to just tell you, it was the best time. People, a lot of people talk about their time in the military. As a second lieutenant, I was doing the weirdest stuff in the world. I was doing stuff that colonels don't get to do. I was out there doing leading edge research and development because I had great battalion commanders. I had battalion commanders who just sat there and went, we have this crazy, stupid lieutenant who doesn't want to sit in his office and be intimidated. He wants to go out and do stuff. And they just let me go wild. And then I had this staff sergeant who was just awesome. This guy was the greatest staff sergeant in the world. And he just, he'd literally pull me aside sometimes and he'd say, sit down, Lieutenant. Here's the relationship we have to have. You sit behind the desk and you think big thoughts because you've got a brain and it's just going a mile an hour, 100 miles an hour, big thoughts. And then you tell me what needs to be done, and I and the corporal will go do it. Your job is not to think big thoughts and then go do it, because when you go do it, you screw it up. So it was great. It was just a wonderful working relationship. And this is why when people ask me about the Marine Corps, I have nothing but love in my heart for the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps allowed me to do everything and more that I could. I had the greatest experience.
Well, now we know why the military budget is so big. People like you go out and pull these stunts.
I bankrupted America. I'm singly responsible.
Last week they were shooting a TV show in my neighborhood. I forgot the name of it. It's about a fire department in Austin, Texas. I don't know if maybe you've seen it. I don't even know what it was. But I was watching. What's that?
But you're in California.
Yeah, right. But they shoot the TV show here. So they were in the street. And they were shooting the scene, and there was a drone with a camera going over it, which I've never seen before. Little did I know you invented it. As I was watching.
I didn't invent that. My drones were bigger. We had the drones. What I invented was adjusted artillery fire. I can't say I invented it. I helped perfect it. There were other people involved, but I'm the one who actually got it into the back of a Humvee and attach that to the battery. They were out doing stuff. I made it practical. My job was to get my battalion ready to kill commies for mommy in a future war against the Soviets. And by the time I finished, we were ready for that. The other thing I did was pretty cool. You know those
the next question. I can't get the.
You know those Estes rockets? Are you familiar with Estes rockets?
No.
Every kid's done it. You know, you build your model rocket and you got the Estes engines. You put them in there, the little squib. You bring it to the car battery. Off it goes in the air. And then the balloon, the parachute comes out and it comes to the ground. You never did that?
No, I was crocheting and other activities.
Man, no. Estes rockets. You could put it up there. You could put a camera on it. And they had just gotten to the point where you could put a camera up and they could take a little like Polaroid type picture. And so I would buy Estes rockets, and we'd have these force on force things, and the enemy would be over there, and I'd go running out with my Estes rocket and assemble it and fire it up, and it'd go up there and poof, take a picture and come back, and I'd have to do it with the wind, so it comes back my way, and we'd get it and get the picture, and we'd plot it on the map, and we'd start firing things at it. So it was the first basic thing like that. It's so crude what we were doing. It was like third grader stuff applied to modern warfare. But again, that's sort of the concept of tactical, immediate tactical aerial imagery being brought back. Because today, every unit has pretty much these little handheld drones, and they set them up and they throw them, or they use a elastic band to launch them, and they fly up over the edge of the battle area, and they take imagery that's broadcast back down to a laptop now. So they're doing it with higher tech, but I did it old school. I fired an Estes rocket up. It took a Polaroid picture. It came down and we plotted it. And I bet you we did it faster than they did because we were enthusiastic.
Well, first comes the concept.
How many Marines get to play with rockets? Come on, man.
All right, you got me psyched. I'm going to join the Marines now. Am I too old? Nick from Australia. In his opinion, the only way for the U.S. to get out of a losing war and save face is to either have Zelensky killed or secretly instigate an uprising and have Zelensky removed. Do you agree?
Well, the problem is once you kill Zelensky, then what? You're still not getting out of a losing war. You're going to lose the war. Or secretly instigate an uprising and have him removed. And then what? The war's still there. How do you... The only way the U.S. doesn't lose face is for Ukraine to win the war. And that's not going to happen. So the question now isn't a matter of the U.S. winning. It's a lesser degree of losing. And this is why the Chinese, the potential for a Chinese negotiated peace settlement is so important. And I hope everybody in the United States is listening to this. Not listening. Hey, Donald Trump, I know you're listening because you stole my words. But
well, actually, we should mention you just made a 2-minute video about that, so that's also on our YouTube channel. The China
about Donald Trump or about the Chinese?
No, the China peace talk.
Yeah, I made a 2-minute video. You watch a 2-minute video, but the bottom line is there's a possibility that China could broker a negotiated into this conflict.
Yeah.
All the pieces are in place. And one of the pieces is the inevitability of a decisive Ukrainian defeat. There's literally nothing Ukraine can do to prevent Russia from steamrolling them. It's happening now, and it's going to happen in a greater accelerated pace. The Chinese could prevent Ukraine from being destroyed as a modern nation state. They can hold on to everything they got right now. They just have to give Russia this territory. They'll be allowed to have their army. Zelensky would be allowed to stay in power, all this stuff. So there's a potential for that. That's the only thing that's going to help America save face, because then if I'm, John Kirby or any one of the spin meisters within the Biden administration, what I say is this: Ukraine was facing the biggest, bulliest army in the world. Them Russians, they're like a Mongol horde, and there was nothing going to stop them. But we, America, stepped up to the plate, and we provided all this equipment, and we helped Ukrainians hold back the Mongol hordes and negotiate a peace settlement. Now, some people might be unhappy with this peace settlement, but understand this: Russia did not win. Russia did not win. And then you get to spin it like that. Meanwhile, Russia's going back going, we won, bitches.
Look at that mug. advertising your book. Let's remind folks that they can get an autographed copy of the book. Scott will personally walk it down to the post office as well. Go to scottrittermerch.com. There you see our friend Daniel Ellsberg, what he thinks
I
about
have
it.
40 of these right behind me right now that have to go to the post office tomorrow.
All right. So you need to rent a U-Haul truck just to get to the post office, right?
Well, I'm going to have to book a time, I think, because I think all the customers are going to be there going, what the hell is he doing?
You missed one of the comments before somebody pointed out what page of your book the word odious appears. I think it was 263.
Hey, it's 263.
Oh, you already know that?
No, it's
you
a
saw
comment.
the comment.
I'm reading the comments.
Oh, all right. Limbo from Kuwait.
I'll probably
will
turn
elect-
off the comments because I'll get angry when the wrong one flashes up. But
all right. Limbo from Kuwait. Will elections in the West force governments to sue for peace, or are other methods required to stop the war frenzy?
elections in the West force governments. Well, if the elections result in a new government that's anti-war, then yeah, that could happen. But one of the problems with elections in the West is that the system selects the candidates, and regardless of which one of your political parties you come from, you're still beholden to the system. So it's not going to be so much an election. There would have to be almost like a revolution to bring in people who are untainted by the system, because otherwise, like in the United States, what's the difference fundamentally between a Republican and a Democrat? What we found when it comes to the president of the United States, the answer is none, because they all do the same stupid things. They all blow things up, attack things. They don't, Barack Obama was Mr. Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
And yet he's the guy that used drones to assassinate more people than anybody else in the history of the United States. So it's not so much elections. It has to be elections tied to some sort of societal transformation process, like a collapse of the economy that disenfranchises the existing political economic elite and allows the people now to select somebody other than somebody picked by the establishment. But no, I just want to point out
there
again,
must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad, while they turn us into a third world country and a third world dictatorship right here at home. The State Department, the defense bureaucracy, the intelligence services, and all of the rest need to be completely overhauled and reconstituted to fire the deep staters and put America first.
You didn't think after what I showed you before I could come up with even better one, did you?
holy cow. That guy is stealing my thunder, man. Good God. I mean, thank God somebody's saying it. Somebody asked about the chest in the right back here.
Yeah.
That's a new piece of furniture that we got. It is wonderful. Voldemort.
Looks great on camera.
Voldemort picked it out, and
she has good taste.
It found the perfect spot for it, and it allows me to store documents. That's a great place to store documents. So we're very happy with it. So thank you, Dragon Milivojevic.
All right. Very nice backdrop. The whole thing is great.
Yeah, we're getting it there. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Yeah.
We noticed, baby. The brewmaster from Wisconsin, now that Poland has approved sending about a dozen of its MiG-29 jet fighters to Ukraine, will these be effective or just sitting ducks for Russian anti-aircraft defenses? Does Ukraine even have the airfields from which to launch these, or will they be flown in for missions from Poland?
Well, we don't know how the aircraft are going to get from Poland to Ukraine. If they fly, that's problematic, because any airfield that they took off from becomes, by extension, a legitimate target of war. Does Ukraine have airfields? Yeah, because Ukraine's flying MiG-29s right now. They have a handful left, and they have some improvised airfields, and they fly combat sorties on a daily basis, and they lose aircraft on a daily basis, which is why it's essential from their perspective they get more. You said a dozen from Poland. The last time I checked, it was 4. or there might be a dozen total going down the road, but they're going to transfer 4 sometime next week. And I'm a little upset with that number because it should be 5. And the reason why I say that is after just watching Maverick Top Gun, 5 is the ace number. And I mean, come on, show some respect to the Russian pilots out there, Poland. If you're going to give Ukraine 5 or MiGs, give them 5 so that the Russian pilot who shoots them all down at least gets to become an ace and get a medal for it. Because otherwise, it's really disrespectful. You're only letting them shoot down 4. And this is the point I'm trying to make. They're all going to be shot down. They will have 0 impact on the battlefield whatsoever. None. So this is just, again, part of the irresponsible policy of the West to lengthen the war in a way that's going to cost Ukraine more dead men.
All right, you can hear Scott fire off these witticisms in person, March 28th through 30th in Texas. Go to scottritterextra.com/uncanceled for all the info. And I'll be there with him. So come, hang out. We'll have ourselves a great time. David from Bellevue, Washington. Could there be a role for China in restarting disarmament talks between Russia and the U.S. and NATO? Well, this question came in before the latest news, but go ahead.
What's the latest news, Jeff?
Well, no, maybe it wasn't the latest. I saw your video today, but I actually don't know how.
Oh, well, disarmament's different because understand that right now, under the New START treaty, which is under suspension right now and due to expire in 2026, the deployed nuclear arsenals of Russia and the United States are capped at 1,550 deliverable warheads. China's got about 350 of them. Now they're building more, but they're way behind. So how do you, if you're going to have a disarmament conference, and it's tripartite, you've got to have relevant, equality. How do you want to bring everybody down to 350? That way China suddenly becomes the equal of everybody. No one's going to buy into that. We're not going to buy into that. We're not going to sit there and say, yeah, China, you got 350. We're going to do you a big favor, guys. We're going to reduce down to 350. So now that you're our equal. No. I think the first step in disarmament is that the United States and Russia have to come together and take the world's largest arsenals and find a way to get them under control and begin the process of bringing them down. Now, here's the interesting part. Russia has, in my opinion, rightfully said that any talk like that, because here's the artificiality of it. We say 1,550 for America, 1,550 for Russia, but America is part of NATO, which has an independent nuclear deterrent that includes France and England, who have submarines and land missiles that bring the NATO numbers up. And then we have B-61 bombs, which are NATO bombs that bring the number up. And the Russians are like, so the treaty is just full of crap. We got 1,550 and you got 3,000 whatever and whatever. So it's already unbalanced. So Russia said any future treaty has to incorporate the NATO numbers. And now by bringing in NATO, bringing in France and the UK, now we have an opportunity to maybe bring in China. And you can have a more complicated negotiation. So there is a chance for that, but it's not going to be China taking the lead. It's going to be Russia and the United States taking the lead, and France, the United Kingdom, and China being wrapped into it. But I think right there you have the basis of the beginning of a genuine multilateral nuclear disarmament treaty that could work. And if you can get those big players down, then here's the problem with China. As soon as China does that, India gets involved. Because the Chinese can't get down to a number where suddenly, because remember what I said, America's not willing to go down to 350 to make China its equal. China's not willing to go down to a certain number and suddenly make India its equal. And so suddenly India becomes, and if you're talking India, then Pakistan's got to come in. So it got a little bit more complicated. And if you're talking China, again, North Korea's got to come in. And so I think this is going to be a disarmament thing that comes in phases. First phase is to get NATO and Russia together. And then as that, you get that locked in, the next phase of disarmament is NATO, Russia, and China come in. Then the next phase of disarmament is NATO, Russia, China, India, and Pakistan. And then right at the bottom, you throw in North Korea and Israel. Yeah, I know Israel doesn't claim to have a nuclear weapons program, but they do. And you get them in, and now you're bringing this thing down here. So that's my dream, because we got to get to nuclear zero. We got to get there, but it can't happen overnight, and it can't be immediate. It's going to have to be this lengthy, phased-in process that makes people comfortable with doing that. Because part of nuclear disarmament, part and parcel of it is nations not feeling threatened about their existential survival. North Korea wouldn't be here today if it didn't have a nuclear weapons program. End of story. And I have to tell you, if Israel didn't have a nuclear weapons program, Iran would have no problem with flattening it with all of its ballistic missiles. The only thing that keeps Israel alive is a nuclear weapons program. So when you have these tiny nations with nuclear weapons programs, how do you engender, the confidence necessary to get them to say, yeah, we're going to give it up? Well, they can't. They have to feel that they're not threatened with elimination. South Africa did it. The only nation to have nuclear weapons, develop nuclear weapons, and then get rid of them in totality. You can say, well, what about Kazakhstan? What about Ukraine? They did. There was Soviet Union weapons. They never had nuclear weapons. They were on their soil, but the codes and control was out of Russia. South Africa built its own nuclear weapons program and then voluntarily got rid of it. Only time that ever happened. But how do we get Israel? How do we get North Korea to do it? They have to feel comfortable enough to say, that when we give this up, we're not going to get swamped. And so I think that comes down to the final click to zero. So that when we get rid of ours, they get rid of theirs, and nobody has nuclear weapons. And hopefully by that time, peace is broken out all over the world, and then we can hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and everything will be great.
Okay. Ann Moss is handling backstage duties. She's curating the live questions as they come in. Later in the show, we'll take some of those questions live. Right now, these are questions that are submitted in advance. And if you would like to submit your question in advance for a future podcast, you can do that at scottritterextra.com. Sergey from Vladivostok, Russia. As a Russian, I feel very sorry for our Paralympic team. They didn't break under the fate, found a goal, reached the finish line, and then a knife in the back. Politics came to the sport. What should be done to keep sports out of politics? I think that should be keep politics out of sports, right? But whatever. You understand.
I understand what he's saying. It's a good question. The answer, though, is simple. The Olympic Committee has to keep politics out of sports.
Just don't
blame the Russian team for alleged sins of the Russian government. I mean, because let me just talk about the hypocrisy of this. Was the United States kicked out of the Olympics when we invaded Iraq?
Nope.
Not even close. Were we ever punished for any of the myriad of sins that we've done? Nope. Our athletes get to run around. They win gold medals. They get to play the Star-Spangled Banner, the American flags flying, and all that kind of stuff. They get to run around the stadiums, waving the American flag, celebrating being American as they play sports. Why can't Russia? Okay, you may have a problem with Russia. That's your business. But the athletes, it's athleticism. Let them play as Russians. Let the Russian team come and compete as Russians. And when they win a medal, let the Russian flag go up. Let them sing their national anthem just like we do. We keep the politics out. That's what the Olympics was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be a chance for the world to come together and engage in sports free of the taint of politics. And hopefully, because, again, the idea was you get all these athletes under one roof and they put the politics behind and they learn how to cooperate with each other. They socialize with each other, become friends, et cetera, et cetera. I know, pie in the sky, kumbaya, whatever, but that was the idea. And then we corrupt it by saying, well, because Russia did X and we disagree with it, we're going to keep the Russian national team out. And then you punish paraplegics? Do they not have it hard enough already?
Yeah, right.
These are people who have already been given, one strike, and they overcome it by working hard to become these fantastic athletes, and then you jam them. You're ruining lives with
That's
this.
cruel.
You're
That's
literally
very cruel.
ruining lives.
Greg from Japan. Are Russia's temporary air borders established around the ongoing military operation area in Ukraine valid under UN law? Does it serve as a template or option for China in the China Sea?
Good question.
Do we have a great audience or what? They come up with some great questions.
Let's put it this way. What the Russians have done around Crimea is to claim the 12-mile territorial boundary that goes off of the land border into the sea and then up into the air. So you have the 12-mile area that is your territorial waters, your territorial airspace. We say you can't do that, Russia, because Ukraine owns Crimea. So any effort from Russia to claim territorial airspace, we say you can't do that. UN law, I think he's talking about UNCLOS, the United Nations, the law of the sea. But we'll get into that in just a second. Now, normally what happens is, even when you have the territorial water put out, if you have an uneven space, where it jots out here and all that, if you are engaged in what's called innocent passage, you get to go the shortest route. So you can go here and you don't have to follow this big thing. You get to sail right through it. That's called innocent passage. And under international law, nations must allow innocent passage of this nature. And this applies for air traffic as well. But generally speaking, air traffic fly in well-established air corridors and all that kind of stuff. But what we've done here with this drone, and the other thing that you can do if this is your territorial water, you can expand and create an exclusion zone and cite national security reasons. For instance, the United States, when we launch rockets out of Cape Kennedy and such, we will create an exclusion zone that goes beyond our territorial waters along the flight path in case there's an accident and the rocket comes down and all that kind of stuff. We can respond to it. But we say nobody gets to operate in that area, even though it's international water. So what Russia's done is, around Crimea, they've created an exclusion zone in addition to their territorial limit. But because we don't recognize Crimea, we don't recognize the territorial limit, we don't recognize the exclusion zone, what we say is we're just going to do innocent passage as we've always done. And on the one hand, if Russia wasn't at war with anybody, we might have a case for that. We could say, nope, this is innocent passage, boom. But we're flying an MQ-9 drone. Now, that's, first of all, it's a military weapon. Now they're going to say it's unarmed, but it has a electronic warfare or signals intelligence pod underneath its left wing that's actively collecting intelligence against the Russian target. Even then, you could say, it's innocent passage still. Not when we provide that intelligence to Ukraine, who then uses it to target the Russians. That makes us a party to the conflict. There's nothing innocent about our passage. And Russia is looking at that MQ-9 coming in. First of all, we shut off the transponder. It's supposed to make it harder to track. You can't shut off your transponder when you're doing innocent passage. You have to be able to broadcast, this is me, 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 as you go through it, so everybody knows that's you, and you're innocent, you're not threatening anybody, you're not deviating left or right. We shut it off, which means maybe there's ill intent, because if you shut off the transponder and you're going on innocent passage, you can deviate to do things. And so the Russians said, no, that's not going to happen. They put up 2 Sukhoi 27s, and Sukhoi, these are fighter aircraft. They made 19 separate passes at the drone, 19. And they did it in a way that, the reason why we know there's 19 is because the U.S. counted each one of them, because they went right by the camera and they waved. I don't know if they waved, but they made their presence known. 19 times, get the hell out of our airspace. 19 times, get the hell out of our airspace. And we didn't. So on the 20th and 21st time, they came in and used a Cold War tactic called dump the fuel on the airplane. And they came in, and it's pretty cool. I don't know if you've seen the videos, but the drone's flying and the Sukhoi comes in and does a little pop-up maneuver, and it dumps the fuel. The first time it sort of missed. You saw he came up and the fuel deviated to the one side of the airplane. Not a big deal. Second time, he dumped it right on the propeller, and everybody's going, he hit the drone. Guys, I'm here to tell you right now, if a Sukhoi 27 made physical contact with an MQ-9 Reaper, the Reaper would have sheared off, would have gone instant and unstable, and would have crashed. That's not what happened. It came in, bam, hit the fuel. Water. Again, anybody who's is a kid, have you ever done the belly flop thing? You know, you go to the 3-meter dive and you jump off and the water's sort of forgiving. It still hurts. You get red, but you go to the 6-meter jump off. It's like hitting concrete because water has a density. And if water's moving fast, density, it's like throwing a rock at something. And so when you come in with fuel and a Sukhoi 27 flying as fast as it is, and it releases that fuel, and that fuel is still together in a clump, when it hits the propeller, it's like a bag of cement hitting the propeller. And well, the tail fin could have been damaged on the drone from that. But again, the drone did not lose. It didn't spin out of control. Sukhoi 27 has a considerable amount of kinetic energy attached to it that would have done a lot of damage, not just the tail fin damage. That plane had stable flight. What happened, though, is the propeller lost its ability to propel, and the plane started to stall, and it went into the water. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it did hit it, but I doubt it. I strongly doubt that it clipped it. But be that as it may, you know, we had no right to be there, and Russia had every right to stop us. And this is just a statement of fact. And you know, I don't know what we're trying now. Lindsey Graham is out there saying, you know, he wants to send up fighter airplanes to escort the next MQ-9 Reaper. Lindsey Graham's an idiot. An idiot. Now, I've said this already, and I'm sure there's videos out there that are, you know, because I said some pretty strong words. I was angry. But, you know,
the Bono is an idiot video is getting a lot of views. You know, it's a big hit.
Bono.
You call him Bono, but it's Bono.
I say I mispronounce so many names and words. It's not even funny. Yeah. I even mispronounce my name sometimes. But the fact is, the guy knows nothing about air-to-air combat. Today, airplanes don't engage in head-on dogfights. That just doesn't happen. So, you know, all the stuff we saw. I mean, look, I love Top Gun Maverick. I watch that movie all the time because it's just fun to watch. But the scene where he's up there and he's shooting them down with the guns and all that, no. Planes come out and the radar picks them up and is communicating. It's over the horizon and you're firing this missile that goes out, and that's it. You probably don't even get to physically see the airplane that you're shooting down. So Lindsey Graham wants to take American fighter planes with pilots in it, that's human beings in case anybody doesn't understand, and put them up there with the MQ-9 drones flying escort mission alongside the Crimean coast. One, they will never see the Russian airplane that shoots them down. Probably because it won't be a Russian airplane that shoots them down. It'll be the Russian S-400 or S-500 anti-air system, the most advanced in the world, whose radars are picking these boys up and pinging on them, and bam, you're dead. Lindsey's an idiot. What does he think? Americans, just because we have a flag on our shoulder, that we're suddenly imbued with godlike qualities where our pilots can, in fact, do what Maverick did in the movie? It doesn't work that way, guys. Movies are movies. Screenwriters predict the outcome. But that's not how it works in real air-to-air combat. First of all, again, they're not going to see the plane that shoots them down. So the last thing you'd want to do escorting the Reaper is to be near it. You want to be way the hell away from it. And if anybody shoots it down, then you can fire at them and you can engage in a long-range dogfight. But it's getting more than 2 aircraft because you're flying right there against the Crimea. So the Russians will be able to scramble, you know, scores of aircraft, dozens of aircraft. So where are we going to come in with dozens? But now we're fighting in their airspace. They control the airspace with their anti-air defense systems. We're going to all get shot down, Lindsey.
He's odious.
No, that's an insult to odious people.
Oh, yeah. That's an insult to regular odious. He's in a special brand. Gary Stephen Gvisser. Never trust a guy with 3 names. From California. Did you recognize Nicholas Oppenheimer, and were you aware of the nature of the public meeting that Putin kept secret until October 3rd, 2008, the month before Obama became president-elect?
Nope, 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 and nope. I'm not familiar with any of that. Put a asterisk next to it, and I'll dig into that.
All right, let's move along to Maria Niziraki, another one with 3 names, from London. In a USA-China war, China will sink many U.S. ships before they even reach mainland China. The U.S. ships and planes that get through will be attacking Chinese ships and mainland China. Would China also launch long-range missiles against mainland USA?
Well,
is that your Jack Benny impression?
I agree that China will sink many U.S. ships before they even reach mainland China. First of all, they're not going to get to mainland China. They're trying to get to Taiwan. But the bottom line is they'll be sunk hundreds of kilometers short of their target by Chinese missiles that are precision-guided, maneuverable, and can't be shot down. So, yeah, we're going to lose everything. So nothing's going to get through. So I don't agree that anything's going to get through. Could some American aircraft fire standoff munitions like cruise missiles that are able to penetrate air defense? Yes, that could happen. If those hit mainland Chinese targets, I think before China starts sending missiles towards the mainland United States, they'll be taking out Guam, places where these weapon systems operated from. So they'll take out Guam, they'll take out Pearl Harbor again. Wow, wouldn't want that to happen. But and then what do we do? Okay, so now Pearl Harbor is a smoking hole. What do? We we fire a long-range system from the United States at China, sort of a show of force because we're manly. But now they have to respond to us, and there it is. The world ends. So this is why you don't want to fight a war with China. The straight up, we can't win it. We're using legacy systems. I think people need to understand that. When I say a legacy system, what I mean is this: the carrier battle group became a thing in World War II. It was very successful. We had these big carrier battles. We had the battle group. Airplanes took off, bombed targets, sunk ships, dominated. And we built bigger and better carriers. And we were able to go out and do things. And during the Cold War, our carrier battle groups, we surrounded them with advanced Aegis ships and all this stuff to shoot down the waves. But there was some concern, even during the Cold War, that all the Soviets had to do is saturate the air defense, the space around the carrier battle group, and they were going to get the carriers or just overwhelm them. This is with old school weaponry. So even at the end of the Cold War, people were starting to second guess the viability of the carrier. But then the Cold War went away, and suddenly we're an unmatched superpower going aircraft carrier power projection, baby. And we're going around, and we used them in the Gulf War. We used them in the global war on terror. We bomb everybody from aircraft carriers because the people we're bombing don't have the ability to reach out and touch us until recently. If you remember, there was a drone, the RQ-4 Global Hawk, I believe it was, that was shot down by the Iranians over the Strait of Hormuz for flying into Iranian airspace. And Donald Trump was saying, let's go bomb the snot out of these people, get our revenge on them. And all the Pentagon went, not a good idea, boss. And he's like, why? Well, you see, the Iranians happen to have long-range missiles that are pretty accurate, and we can't shoot them down. And if we start attacking, they're going to hit all of our air bases, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. We might have a base in Saudi Arabia. They'll hit that, Bahrain, Kuwait, and all the ships that are in range too will get sunk. It's the United States Navy. They can't sink them. We're invincible. No, we're not. It's basic ships, and it's a concept that dates back to the Titanic. When you put a big enough hole in a ship, it sinks. And it predates that too. From the beginning of naval warfare, put a hole in a ship, it sinks. And the Iranians could put a lot of holes in our ships and they could sink. And it's not me saying this. General Berger, the commandant of the Marine Corps, talked about the legacy concepts of the Marines, to put all the Marines on these giant amphibious warfare ships, sail them close so they could get off and do the World War II type amphibious invasion. Problem is, Berger said, they're going to sink our ships before we get close enough to do that. The Iranians, we can't get close enough before they sink the ships. And this isn't going to be the Gulf War where we get to fly into permissive airfields. The Iranians are going to take the airfields out. We're not going to be able to offload at permissive ports because the Iranians are going to take the ports out. This is what long-range precision strike missiles give you. And you know who does missiles better than the Iranians? The Chinese. They have more of them. And so all this legacy stuff that we have, the carrier battle group, the amphibious ready group, will all be sunk before they get anywhere near Taiwan. That's the reality of it. Maybe some of our aircraft could get through, but not carrier-based aircraft, because the carrier is going to be sunk. It would be our long-range bombers who would come in and they'd fly a profile which gets them as close to the Chinese shore as possible, where they salvo off their cruise missiles, and then they fly away. And if they do that, the Chinese will take out the base that they took off from, probably Anderson Air Force Base in Guam. This is war, guys. We're going to lose it every time we run a war game, unless we cheat, because we do cheat all the time. We cheat in everything. We're Americans. That's what we do nowadays. But if we run an honest war game, we lose every single time. The only way we win is to have people come in and do things like, well, what if we have a magic weapon? There you go. What if we have a magic weapon? Let's program a magic weapon. So we program a magic weapon that the Chinese can't kill. So now we're cheating. And then we come in and we still lose. What if we get 3 magic weapons? When we do that and we give ourselves more capability, and suddenly it's a draw. We say, we fought the Chinese to a draw. Let that be a lesson to the Chinese. There ain't no lesson. Chinese whip us hands down, because we have a military that's not capable of fighting a modern war. That doesn't mean that we couldn't get the military. The Marine Corps, I'll give General Berger credit. He's saying we're not doing this this old school amphibious stuff. We're going to reconfigure the Marines in the Pacific to do smaller, more mobile, agile raids. We're going to start emphasizing long-range strike systems that are capable of touching the Chinese at range greater than they can come out and touch us. And so he's starting to think creatively. Thank you. That word, a lot of syllables. But thinking in a creative manner to come up with tactics, operations, and weapon systems that are survivable on a modern battlefield to take out the Chinese threat. But they just started doing this. They're not ready. They can't operate. And this is only good in the South China Sea against these islands. They can't take this and take it to Taiwan because a whole bunch of water between there and then. And what happens when you put ships in a whole bunch of water? They get sunk.
Nebojša Milunovic from Leskovac, Serbia. What do you foresee as the ultimate goal with U.S. naval forces being deployed around Taiwan? China will not be scared, nor will Taiwan be defended. What is the intention with submarines for Australia?
Well, U.S. naval forces deployed around Taiwan will all die. We just acknowledge that. China won't be scared and Taiwan won't be defended. Before I answer the last part about the Australian subs, let me just point out that while the United States is continuing to do its diplomatic George of the Jungle routine, thumping their chest, crying out before they jump on a rope and go out and be manly, the Taiwanese are starting to wake up to the fact that a war would mean the death of Taiwan. Everybody's looking at Ukraine. The big lesson right now, everybody, please, the whole world, war is not what the United States has been doing for the last several years, going in and murdering villagers and wedding parties and all that kind of stuff, assassinating American citizens with drones. That's not war. Look at Ukraine. That's war. Look at the death and destruction. Understand that Ukraine has lost more dead men in 1 year than the United States lost combat casualties in all of World War II on both the Pacific and the European theater. I'll say that one more time just so it sinks in. Ukraine has lost more dead soldiers in 1 year than the United States lost in both the European and Pacific theaters for the entire Second World War. This is death on a scope and scale that, as General Cavoli, the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, said, is beyond imagination. NATO couldn't even imagine it. And right now, NATO can't fight that war. Literally can't fight that war. To show you how stupid all of this is, we've given the Ukrainians about $115 billion worth of aid, but most of that comes in the form of financial assistance. Around 40, maybe 50 billion of it is actual military assistance. In order to replace the 50 billion that we've given the Ukrainians, the Pentagon's come out and said, we need 300 billion. You got it right, ladies and gentlemen. We gave away 50 billion to Ukraine. In order to replace the 50 billion, they need 300 billion. Yep, it's that stupid. But we're out of everything. Germany can't fight. The head of the inspector general, was just fired because he was honest. He said things like, we gave away all our helmets. Literally, Germany gave away all their helmets. So they have soldiers coming in now, basic training, and they don't have any helmets to give them. They don't have any body armor to give them. They don't have any rifles to give them. They don't have any ammunition for the rifles. It all went to Ukraine. Losing concept. They gave away tanks. And so they're like, the problem is with giving away tanks, guys, we can't build new ones because we can't afford it, because high energy prices, cost of steel, factories don't work. Germany's got nothing. The guy said, we can't fight. We literally can't fight. That's an honest to God appraisal by the inspector general. So he was fired for telling the truth by a defense minister who doesn't know anything about the military. I mean, in 1980-81, he did 1 year of conscription duty or 2 years of conscription duty with a air defense regiment or something. But then he's been a civilian lawyer out there. He doesn't know anything about the military, but he fired the guy who does know about the military because he told the truth. Not only that Germany can't fight a war right now, but Ukraine can't win the war. Everybody's coming up with that conclusion. I forget who it was that got in a lot of trouble early on saying that Ukraine can't. Oh, me. I've been saying from day one because it's right. Ukraine can't win this war. They won't win this war. What was that noise? You telling me to shut up?
No.
Trump.
Oh, Trump.
You said who said it, so I played Trump.
Trump stole it from me. Don't give him credit. He doesn't get to have street cred off of my name.
Play * free. Leskovac, Serbia. Do you think it's likely that the former Council for Mutual Economic Assistance countries like Hungary, Romania, or even Bulgaria could pivot towards Russia, considering the somewhat strained relations with the EU bloc and friendliness with the East?
I think it's possible. I mean, we know that Hungary's already heading in that direction. Romania is tougher because it's politics, and Bulgaria is tough. Look, these are nations that the United States has been very successful. The United States and the European Union have been very successful about cultivating a following amongst the youth of these nations. And so they have entire generations that have become, there's a magic English word that captures what they become, woke. They just become woke. They're very progressive. They believe that America is heaven. And so anything America does culturally, anything America does politically, whatever is good. And Russia is, of course, bad because they bought into this whole Russophobia stuff. And this is in Romania, this is in Bulgaria, this is throughout Europe. An entire generation has been programmed by American aid money and American cultural wars to believe that America is the ultimate of culture and Russia is the Stone Age. When in fact, it's just the opposite. Russia actually has some really good culture that goes back a long way, and America's like this desert. I know I'm going to get in trouble because we have orchestras, we have ballets, we have all these people out there doing it. But most of the orchestras are playing music written in Europe. Most of the ballets are performing ballets that were written in Europe, and a lot of those ballets were written by Russians like Tchaikovsky. Jeff, you're on a roll, man. That's just clever.
Quick, baby.
You are clever. I mean, is this Anne? Tell me the truth. Anne's the clever one. You're not this clever.
We can give her the credit, sure.
Okay. But
no, it's Jeff.
You were smiling. You had that Cheshire grin on your face, and I'm like, he's going to do something clever. So you did. No, but my
would
my
love
point
to be
is,
able to get along with Russia.
We've got to be able to get along with. Hungary's waking up. And will Romania wake up? I think everybody's going to wake up eventually, but it's going to take time because America has literally stolen the soul of an entire generation of European youth. Look what happened in Georgia. We talked about this before, but I'll just mention it again. The whole USAID, Agency for International Development budget, $40 million a year, is about creating a bottom-up coup. They go in and they establish these grassroots, progressive, diversity enhanced, political, community development programs. Believe me, I just read the whole list of 22 programs, and many of them are about that grassroots community developer program. What does that mean? That means you're empowering people to think differently than the traditional governing structure. And then you take that and you change the way they run elections. You call it, election integrity. No, it's about election control. It's about creating an election system that gives a voice to these newly created diversity movements while suppressing, because here's the next thing you do while you're doing election reform. You come in and you say, we have to make societies resilient to disinformation. What that means is you suppress dissent. Anybody who dares say, hey, bad idea, don't want to do that, that's disinformation. And then you do media reform where you say only fact-based stories get published. All this other disinformation we don't give a voice to. So only the diverse groups get access to the media to educate or to brainwash people with the USAID dictated formula. Meanwhile, anybody who dares says, hey, we got a problem with that disinformation, shut them down. And then you have your coup. And so the Georgians were smart enough to say, why don't we just ask, we'll pass a law, the one that the Americans did, Foreign Agent Registration Act. And we'll pass that law, and anybody who receives 20% or more of foreign money to their non-governmental structure, everything, they have to declare it. And then we'll all know who's doing all this, because not everybody takes the time to go through all 22 programs and the $40 million to figure out where it went. Oh no, suddenly the United States, who has the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and suddenly the European Union, who's preparing a Foreign Agent Registration Act, said that's undemocratic. If you do that, that's a pro-Russian policy. Stupidity. But this is what's happened throughout all of Europe. Georgia's not unique. Georgia just recently came to a head because they tried the law. The U.S. orchestrated demonstrations to suppress the law. And now conservative Georgian society is out there demonstrating in favor of not letting woke take over Georgia. But woke has captured Europe, and it's going to take a long time for that to be, I don't want to use the word purge because that sounds violent, but for that to be replaced by old thinking that's linked towards the cultural realities of the nations and not the imposed fake culture that the United States is trying to export.
Our friend Acid Fuzz Pedals just bought your book. I got a lot of stuff coming in here. I got on all my monitors. Remember Acid Fuzz Pedals? Speaking of which, there it is. If anybody else wants to buy an autographed copy of Scott's book, you can get there, scottrittermerch.com.
Got to get the hand ready.
Oh, yeah. Well, many, many autographs. So 40 you did within the past day or two, huh?
That's in the box. Yeah, there's been more. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Jan from Michigan. Many countries and their people have had enough of American meddling in wars in other countries. Why is the war not a topic in the presidential campaign? I think we addressed that earlier. How do Americans think of the wars and military actions of the U.S.? Do you think Americans really love peace?
Trump.
You do know that Joe Biden hates my guts. And so you're just setting me up for more hate. But
the president has a big stick. I promise you.
Promise me. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer this question. We're going to start with, do I think Americans really love peace? And my answer is no. America is the most violent nation that's ever existed in the history of the world. We are a nation that is always at war, and we always have to be at war. The military-industrial complex, which is linked to Congress, which provides the money, and there's the feedback loop because Congress raises the money, funds the complex, which then takes some of that money, feeds it back to Congress, and you have this little incestuous loop. It's all about war. You can't justify $800+ billion a year military budgets in a time of peace. We've never been serious about peace. After the end of the Cold War, it was supposed to be the peace dividend, but we didn't accept that. We began a forever war in the Middle East through the Gulf, Desert Storm, and then a decade of, enforcement of no-fly zones over Iraq. We bombed Serbia. We funded conflict in Chechnya, and we've just been at constant war. And the American people are okay with it. We are okay with it. We don't lose any sleep about this. Trust me, there's some, but the American people, guys, it's March Madness right now. The number one thing going on in America is picking your bracket. Do you think the American people are losing sleep over the fact that tonight, as we speak, thousands of Ukrainians are dying? Hundreds of Russians are dying? No, we don't lose any sleep over that. Are we losing sleep over the potential of little Georgia, 3.5 million people, opening a second front against Russia that could result in tens of thousands of Georgians losing their lives like that? No. Arizona lost, man. My bracket's blown. Now it's up to Gonzaga to do something. That's all Americans care about. We don't care, but we don't want peace. We're a nation that does not have a function of peace. It makes us uncomfortable because we lose our reason to be. How does America project itself? Well, why don't we do this? Let's do a compare and contrast of this budget for the State Department, that's diplomacy, guys, and the budget for the Pentagon, which is war. And one is really, really big, and one is really, really small, and I'll let you guess which one's what. We de-emphasize diplomacy. Fact is, the way we operate, let's look at the Middle East. The number one entity that represents the face of America in the Middle East is not the U.S. ambassador each respective country. It is the Central Command Military General. He is the voice of America. He is the face of America. The military dominates everything. The ambassador is there to support the commander of Central Command. It's the same thing in Africa. If you think that the American ambassador of a respective country is calling the shots, think again. It's the head of Africa Command, because everything we do in Africa is geared around the military and security. That's just the way it works. Go to Europe. You think it's the American ambassador, or is it the Supreme Allied Commander of Military Forces in Europe? He's the guy that calls the shot. The military controls everything, everything. And that means we can't enjoy peace because we are all about war. And the other thing we have too, look, I just told you how much I love being in the Marine Corps, and I really did. I thought it was great. But in America, we put Marines, we put everybody in the military on a pedestal instantly. You're a hero, man. For what? Why am I a hero? Because you joined, you served. I got a paycheck. It's a job. I'm being trained to do something, and I sort of enjoy doing it. But you put your life on the line. You're a hero. No, I'm not a hero. I'm just doing my job. That doesn't mean you can't say, hey, thanks, appreciate it. But we've glamorized the military. We've turned it into automatic Hollywood status. You're a hero. If you want to ask yourself why there's so much veteran dysfunction today, because they were told they were heroes. You take average, normal Americans, they put them in a job that's not spectacular. A U.S. Army mechanic, same thing as the guy that fixes your car down in Central Avenue. He's a mechanic too. He just fixes a different kind of car. He's not a hero. He's a good guy. He's doing a job. He's getting paid for it. Not a hero. Most of these guys aren't heroes, but we've elevated them all to hero status, and then they get out of the military and they come back and they're confused. They can't reintegrate into society, and that's why we have 21 plus or more popping themselves off every day. We have to stop.
Who is a hero, or what is a hero in your opinion?
Well, let me put it this way. If I'm trained to go into war, and I had this argument about firefighters too, because we put firefighters up there. Oh, the heroes, the first responder heroes. Guys, you trained me to go into a burning building. You equip me with stuff that protects me from the flames. And you give me tactics that are designed to allow me to function and accomplish my job. So how is it heroic if I'm doing what you trained me to do with the equipment you trained me to do the way you trained me to do it? I ain't no hero. I'm just a firefighter doing my job. Now, heroism is when you go above and beyond. Heroism, for instance, don't tell me I'm a hero because I rescued somebody. I never rescued anybody in a fire, by the way. I'm not trying to take, this isn't, what's that, stolen valor? No hero here. But let's say you go in and you're doing the search of a building, which I have done, in smoky conditions, looking for victims, and you find one. And you recover that victim. Are you a hero? Nope. You're just doing your job, man. You were trained to go in and do the search of a building, and you found what you were searching for, and you recovered it. You're not a hero. Now, if you're going into the building and the fire conditions, because you're trained about fire conditions, and you're taking a look and basically the room's approaching near flashover conditions, the heat's getting really bad, and all your training tells you you have to leave now. And you say, there's somebody over there. And now I'm going to go beyond my training. Now I'm breaking out of the comfort zone of what I was trained to do, and I'm entering the danger zone. And I'm deliberately putting my life at risk to go in and recover a victim and bring him out. That's a hero. And the same thing in combat. You're not a hero if you're in the Marines and somebody shoots at you and you pop up and you lay down suppressive fire. Not a hero. You're just doing your job. The hero is when your buddy's wounded and you have to break out of what your tactics say, which is when enemy is laying down suppressive fire, you go down until you can return enough fire to suppress them and maneuver. And instead you say, I am going to run out there with a good possibility of getting killed or wounded to rescue somebody. And under fire, you grab them, you bring them back. That's a hero. A hero is when you get blown to hell, you're bleeding to death, you bandage up your bullets and your wounds, and instead of being evacuated as you're supposed to be, you ought to stay on the battlefield and carry out the battle. That's a hero. A hero is somebody that goes outside of the boundaries of what you're expected to do. And so,
now, would you apply that to only a physical danger, or could it be in other areas too? For example, could it be plausibly argued that Elon Musk is a hero for restoring free speech?
Heroism tends to imply, I think the original concept of heroism implies physical acts.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be, I think, integrity. I just think we over apply the term hero. I just think we've diluted it so it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And I brought it out about the military because the second you say all of the military's heroes, well, we can't touch their budget. But if we view it as just a job, because ladies and gentlemen, it's just a job. And now just a job is like every other job. And you sit there and say, what's the cost benefit analysis here? Are we getting the bang for our buck? Is this really what we want to be doing? And if we don't want to do it, then we have to cut it down. We have to get rid of excess stuff. But we can't do that now because now you're getting rid of heroes. Can't get rid of heroes. Got to keep the heroes out there. Heroes. They aren't heroes. They're doing a job. And if the job's not needed, cut it, get rid of it. But we can't do that because we've programmed ourselves into accepting all the BS out there that everybody who wears a uniform is a hero. No, they're just doing a job.
I agree with that commenter. He said the hero mentality here in the U.S. is cringe. It is. Yeah. We see it everywhere. It's like even on these talk shows, like Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon comes out every night and does their stupid show, and they get a standing ovation. Remember when a standing ovation was something that happened very rarely, and you felt it was like very special,
Yeah.
To show up for work every day and tell stupid jokes, standing ovation. No, I think I'll stay seated. Let's do for Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel. Not only will I stay seated, I'm not even going to put the TV on.
Oh, happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you, Ken.
Oh, yeah, right.
It is. I'm not wearing green.
I'm having the
Normally I wear
traditional
green.
red wine. Let's do one more question from the ones that have been submitted in advance. And Ann, get some good ones from the live audience coming in on YouTube and Facebook.
I get it.
Thank you, Ann. Marco from New York. There are 4 nuclear power plants and 15 reactors in Ukraine. In the event that the Ukraine war is lost and Russia dictates terms of the peace, could vindictive actors destroy some of those plants and deprive Russia of acquired territory?
I mean, in theory, yes. I mean, nuclear reactors are harder to destroy than people think. But yeah, I mean, in theory, that could happen. That's why, hopefully, that won't happen. I mean, who's the vindictive actor? The Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian military? How are they going to destroy it? You know, because the Russians aren't stupid, and they'll have the ability to, you know, they're trying to push the Ukrainians far away from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, push them away beyond artillery range. So that's at missiles, the Tochka-U, they have air defense systems. Yeah, I mean, that could happen, but I don't think it would happen, because Chernobyl should have taught everybody about the fact that that's, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You're not just denying Russia something, you're denying Ukraine something. You're bringing a lot of people to, you know, hurt and pain, and you're going to be hunted down. Vindictive actors understand most of the people when people do stuff, unless they're kamikaze types, they're doing it because they want to better their position down the road. But if you're a vindictive actor who takes out a nuclear power plant, commits nuclear terrorism, the world will hunt you down and kill you, all of us. So I don't think, no, I just don't. It's something that we have to be concerned about, but I just don't see it being the, you know, that realistic of an outcome.
I like that phrase, though. I think I might make that the title of my autobiography, Vindictive Actor. The Jeff Norman story.
Ooh. Do you need a ghostwriter? I've written a couple books.
Let's talk. All right, Ann, what do you got for us in the way of live questions? We stream live on Twitter, Rumble, and Twitch also, but we can only see the live comments coming in on YouTube and Facebook.
We have many people asking or wanting Scott to talk about the arrest warrant for Putin. I think I've got one here. A lot of people want to know about this.
Well, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the president of Russia has had a warrant issued for his arrest by the International Criminal Court, specifically the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. This is stupidity of the highest order. The basis of this, it's not just for Putin, but it's also for the commissioner of that deals with the transfer. That deals with the transfer of children out of Ukraine into Russia, and they're accusing him of kidnapping. I mean, the whole idea is that this is somehow some sort of giant crime. I haven't had a chance. I mean, this just happened today, so I have to actually, one of the things I'm going to do is go take a look in history what other nations have done with children in time of conflict. For instance, in Saipan, the Marines were on that island. Japanese civilians were so afraid of the Marines that they would run up in the hills and jump off of cliffs and commit suicide. And many of the women took their children, but some of those children lived. Some of the children were there. They were orphaned children. The United States did what? Did we bayonet them? Did we burn them? Or did we take them and turn them over to authorities who would then process them within the context of American jurisdiction? Did we steal Japanese children? The answer is no. And we can do this over and over again. We can go in throughout war. What Russia's done is that there were children in a conflict zone, and Russia removed them from the hazard of the conflict zone and took them to safety. Some of these children were orphans, and as a result, they were brought into the Russian system and they were adopted. Other children, the parents in Ukraine can't be found, and so it's still an unknown status. Some parents are finding them. You know, what's interesting for kidnapped children, some Ukrainian parents have actually managed to get to Russia by going the indirect route up, you know, through the Baltics and coming in. And when they come down south and they find their children, they get the children back because the Russians didn't steal them. The Russians are saving them. They're right now, and then the Russians get accused of all things. They have these pioneer camps. Some of the pioneer camps outside of Moscow are pretty cool. I mean, these are cool camps. And normally the children of Moscow elite or whatever, they every summer go off to the pioneer camps and they have a nice little summer camp. What the Russians did is they emptied out these pioneer camps and made them only for Ukrainian children, to give the Ukrainian children a place to relax and enjoy, you know, life in a non-threatening environment in the summer. And how does the ICC treat this? Propagandizing them. These are military camps. You're taking Ukrainian children and you're re-educating them. Re-educating goddamn kids playing games. How's that re-education? You're re-educating them. That's a war crime. Well, actually, it's not, you dipshit. Excuse my language. I'm just so fed up with this guy, this Khan guy. He's the guy that went over there. This is the asshole that went to Bucha. Here we go again. And bought into the lies about how Russia committed this crime. And I'm like, you dumb son of a bitch. It's right there in front of you. Why don't you interview the lady, the female Ukrainian politician who went out and said, everybody just stay home. It's a cleansing operation. You might hear some gunfire, so stay home. Why in God's name would you hear gunfire? Ask her that question, but you didn't, did you? How about the Ukrainian security services that on their webpage bragged about, we came in and we began a cleansing operation against Russian collaborators and saboteurs. Why don't you interview the guy that put that together, or interview the Safari unit? That's their webpage. Interview, and why don't you interview the boatswain, the war criminal, a frickin' war criminal who was on videotape saying shoot people that aren't wearing the blue identity band, a war crime. It's right there, Mr. Khan. I could just give you people to do that. I could also teach you a thing about forensic investigations. You know what you should be doing? Pulling up the bodies, or before they allow the bodies to be contaminated, investigating the bodies to find out time of death. Critical question. Did you ask that question? Did you investigate that? No, because you're a politicized son of a bitch. That's all you are. You're useless. You're scum. And you've disgraced the concept of an international criminal court, if it could ever have viability under this corrupt system that it is, because it's been politicized from day one. Now you indicted the president of Russia. Good luck serving that warrant. I mean, I'm not going to tell the Russians what to do, but I'd declare war on the ICC right now. I would just say, you guys are done. We're shutting you down one way or another. We put arrest warrants out for all employees of the ICC. You're now criminals in the eyes of Russia for threatening our president. Wherever you travel, go on vacation. I dare you to go on vacation. Our FSB is going to come in, bam, take you, and we're going to put you in jail for the rest of your life. How you like them apples? Now, you can get out of this by quitting your job. Everybody just quit the job. Shut it down. Shut her down. There is no more ICC. That's what Russia should do. They're not going to, because they're civilized. I guess.
Well, meanwhile, here in the U.S., where we're, of course, not as ridiculous, the former president of the United States looks like he's about to be indicted for supposedly paying hush money to a former stripper and reporting it as a personal expense, which somehow is supposed to be a big, terrible crime. So both the Russian president and the American president are facing rather silly questions. Go ahead.
Putin's never going to do a perp walk.
Yeah.
Trump is going to do a perp walk. And I tell you again,
it's clown world, though. They're both examples of clown world.
It's horrible. I am not the biggest Trump fan. I'm turning into one thanks to your clips tonight. You basically won me over because Trump's singing my tune. I wrote the damn tune. Again, copyright infringement, Mr. Trump. But if they perp walk him, if they dare perp walk him, he's got my vote right there.
Right. That's the thing. Yeah. That's what Matt Taibbi said the other day, and I've been saying it too. I forget exactly what he worded. It was perfect. You don't stop Trump's supporters. You create a movement.
You create them.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
There was a million ways to get me not to vote for Donald Trump. A million ways to get me to not vote for Donald Trump. But what they're doing right now, this politicized
It's worse.
criminalization.
Yeah.
And plus, it's not just that. This isn't even becoming a hard thing because people are going to say, well, what about this? What about this? Jeff, you and I have talked about this. I believe that the number one threat to the world is in the form of nuclear weapons. And if the United States and Russia, given the tensions that exist right now, with idiots like Lindsey Graham who want to go shoot down Russian airplanes, if we don't have arms control and we have an arms race and there's a proliferation of new nuclear weapons with no control, no confidence, anger, etc., we're all going to die. Literally, we're all going to die. Donald Trump is the only politician out there who is saying the right thing. We got to have arms control. We can't use nuclear weapons. He's recognizing NATO as the gross violator of international law that it is. There's literally no reason for NATO to exist. He's saying all the right things. Who is the number one threat to global peace? Us. Do you know that Ned Price, the spokesperson of, I forget who's a National Security Council or something like that, maybe State Department, I get it, but he's a former CIA guy. He had the audacity to say that, mocking the Chinese again, because the Chinese had dared to bring the Saudis and the Iranians together and create peace where the United States were promoting war. He said, we are solely responsible for stability in the Middle East. All the stability that the Middle East enjoys today is because of us. And I'm like, what? Did we not invade Iraq? Have we not been at war? Did we not sanction? What about Madeleine Albright starving 500,000 Iraqi children to death, saying it's a price we're worth you pay? How about the sanctions we have against Syria that we won't lift to allow humanitarian goods to come in to help Syrians who are hurt by the Yemen? Again, ladies and gentlemen, don't do it if you have a weak heart, but please do it. Go look at the videos of the Yemeni children, the starving Yemeni children, and it's our fault, 100% the fault of the United States. End of story. We're guilty of all that. And Donald Trump's the only politician that has the courage. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard sort of hints at it, but she never makes that leap. She's always sort of holding back. Donald Trump just did it. I mean, what you just showed me tonight is there. Now, I saw somebody else there. Do I wish there was another politician out there saying that? Yeah, I really do, because Donald Trump brings a lot of baggage. But you know what? I'm willing to accept that baggage if he follows through on saving the world, because he's only going to serve 4 years. He can't serve anymore. And so I can.
That's why the anti-Trumpers are worse, because that's permanent Washington. That's the mindset that's with us. It's been with us forever, and hopefully, possibly will continue to be with us. He's temporary. Any way you slice it, he's temporary. But
the beauty of it too, I mean, I wrote about this, I'm 100% correct, but everybody was like, oh, look at, okay, I'm not, we're going to lose all our supporters now, but I'm not somebody that believes that the election was stolen. I believe the election was manipulated. I'm somebody who believes that the Democrats used mail-in ballots and all this stuff to have an extra.
Well, it was stolen by censoring the president and by censoring the New York Post.
And
bearing the Hunter Biden.
But my point is this: when you look at the demographics of the vote, amazing things happen. If Donald Trump is the epitome of evil, the most racist man on the world, the most sexist man on the world, the worst man in the world when it comes to anybody but white Americans. The only demographic that he actually lost vote in was white American males. Every other demographic he was turning. More black males voted for him, percentage-wise. More black females, more white females, more Latinos. He was turning. And you know what we're talking about here? America. America was going, why? James Carville said it. It's the economy, stupid. Donald Trump, for all of his faults, was turning America around for Americans. He was delivering on the promise that, the average American is going to, you think about it. What's Joe Biden? What's the Democratic approach towards, for instance, Mexicans? We want to give away welfare state, all this kind of stuff. So we're going to trap them in perpetual, and the most racist thing too, we have to help out the Latino community by having a minimum wage. Minimum wage is poverty, dude. You want them into perpetual poverty. What did Donald Trump say? I want to build industrial jobs. I don't want you working on minimum wage. I want you to go getting the $40, $50, $60 an hour job. And you know what? Latino Americans went, hell yeah, that's what we want. And the same thing with Black Americans. They were looking around saying all the Democratic Party does is lie to us, get us out to vote for them, and then stuff us back into the ghetto and ignore us until the next election cycle. Donald Trump's about building jobs that actually empower us by giving us the money so we can go out and do the American dream. And he was starting to win them over. And that was only after 4 years. Imagine what would have happened if Donald Trump had 8 years to do that. It would have flipped the demographic narrative in the United States, and Democrats would have been in a lot of trouble. Now, he's only got 4 years left, but not everything Donald Trump did was bad. Again, some of the stuff he did was bad. Pulling out of the INF treaty, stupid. Hey, Donald, consistency with the arms control thing, okay? If you believe in arms control, you got to get the INF treaty back. Call me. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do.
Yeah, he should have pardoned Julian Assange, too.
Well, there's a lot of things he should do that he sort of promised that he was going to do, and he didn't. And I think he did it because he was intimidated. But the beauty of a 4-year Trump, he doesn't have to worry about re-election. So he can just go. He may be
less. He learned a few things. He may be less intimidated now. Maybe even more dangerous.
I am a little concerned about I am your retribution. While it sounds nice and it feels nice, I don't know. But again, we'll see what happens. There's a long time. There's a long way between now and then. But the clips you played were music to my ears. Trump. Music to my ears.
All right, Ann, let's get some more questions in. Hey, it's Richie, the angel from Quebec. Apparently, Tucker Carlson's conversations were intercepted and his trip to Russia was canned. Overreach, or are they hiding behind some nebulous law to stop someone like that? I didn't hear about this. Do you know what he's talking about?
Well, I heard about the conversation being intercepted. I didn't know his trip to Russia was canned. Look, the bottom line is this. There's no law that prevents people from traveling to Russia right now. There are laws against people doing business with Russia. Sanctions. You cannot get involved in sanctions violation at all. But Tucker Carlson's a journalist, so sort of all that stuff goes to hell in a handbasket. He gets to go in and carry out journalism. I don't know why he didn't go. I mean, was there something about his conversations that compromised him? I don't know. I'd have to, what's that word we have to put next to it? An asterisk.
His conversations were compromised concerning the Dominion scandal. That's for sure.
Well, I know that, but I didn't know that was linked to a trip to Russia. But we'll see.
Yeah. Be careful what you say. And what else we have for the inspector? Accente Adrian, thanks for the donation. Thank you very much for everything. Scott, do you think Romania will be dragged into this war?
First of all, I don't think Romania would be dragged into this war. I think Romania has a bunch of warmongering, pro-Western idiots in charge who somehow think that this war could be beneficial for Romania. They're being misled by the United States. They have the 101st Airborne Division. They're going to have a couple, tank battalions there on their border, and they're going, "Ooh, look, American heroes are here." And they might get stupidity and think that maybe they can go in and absorb Moldova, which apparently decided that their constitution doesn't matter. And the fact that the constitution clearly says that the language of Moldova is Moldovan, they've decided to go to Romania. It is Romanian. We know it. No one's playing. But your constitution says it's Moldovan. So if you don't want to call it Moldovan, change your constitution. But don't do something stupid like say, no, it's Romanian, because what? You want to become part of Romania? There's a lot of people that don't want to be part of Romania because Moldova was for the longest time in the Soviet Union. And so there's a lot of people that have good feelings towards the former Soviet Union, towards Russia. They don't want to be part of Romania. They don't want to be part of NATO. And NATO's losing its allure. So what that means is that the pro-Western people who are currently the political and economic elite in Romania are looking down the road saying we may not be in power much longer because everything that we've been promising the Romanian people ain't going to happen. European Union could collapse. Trump gets elected, NATO goes away. And so how do they retain their viability? Make a move on Moldova, empower Moldova to make a move on Transnistria. So it's not that Romania would be dragged into this war. I think Romania would drag itself into this war. I think there's a lot of Romanians that think there's something to be gained by exploiting the chaos that's come out of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict.
All right, we have time for a couple of more questions. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and for your donations and your participation. We love you for it. Demanda C. The International Criminal Court has just lost the little amount of credibility it had by issuing an arrest warrant for Putin. Netanyahu has escaped their notice all along with Blair and Bush, Obama, etc. Thoughts, Scott? Well, you just had some thoughts, but maybe some more.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you want to know why the International Criminal Court didn't indict George W. Bush? Because we'd have blown the living snot out of it. All right? We don't mess around. We're America. And if you tried to pull that stunt, we'd destroy you. We'd bomb you. We'd invade you. We'd gun you down. We'd arrest you. We'd do anything. Look what Trump did. Now, he didn't bomb them, but we issued arrest warrants. We threatened to arrest people from the ICC that dared talk about opening up a war crimes investigation against Americans in Afghanistan and all that stuff. We're like, you ain't going to do that. You're threatening America. That's a crime. We're going to get you. That's why I mean, gosh, I don't like to give advice to anybody, but if the Russians are listening, go to war against the ICC. Just for a second, pretend you're America. Do what America would do, which is to shut that ridiculous, stupid excuse of, just get rid of it. But no, the hypocrisy of it, first of all, Putin has not committed a war crime. Not at all. I mean, God, I wish I was a lawyer sometimes, because I would just go up there and defend him pro se in front of the ICC and say bullshit, 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 bullshit. And then I'd file prosecutorial misconduct charges, and I'd get Khan arrested and put on the docket and put him in jail for the rest of his life, because that's where he belongs. He's not doing the law. He's allowing the law to be politicized, which, if you believe in the rule of law, is the worst thing that can happen. And that's what people need to understand. This is why I'm so upset about it. It's not that I'm upset that Putin got, that's Russia's business. I'm upset that this institution that's supposed to be about the rule of law is being corrupted by politics, which means that the law no longer has meaning, that it's all a lie. And that's what's happened here in the United States. We've allowed the system of justice to be corrupted by politics, so people who speak out like me can be accused of crimes, have a kangaroo court thrown at you, a trial which was just a freaking joke, and then they can put you away for 3 years. And then you get to come back, and everybody else gets to, every time you say something, they go, well, he's a twice convicted pedophile. I was never convicted twice, and I'm not a pedophile. But it doesn't matter, because that's what happens when you have a corrupt justice system. You empower stupidity of that. And now what they're trying to do, and I read it, Putin now, he's an indicted. So it's never going to be Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. It's going to be Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, who's under indictment for war crimes. He didn't commit a war crime, not even close. He didn't do anything wrong. But Khan has allowed this system to become politicized. Khan is politicized. And it's not just discrediting the ICC, it's discrediting the rule of law. So if we want to live in a jungle, Burrell, all you've done, Burrell, because Burrell came out and spoke. They have spoken. And of course, Putin is now a war criminal. No, he's not. You're an idiot. But, he's the guy who said that Europe is a garden and the world is a jungle. Europe's a jungle, man. It's the damn jungle. It's the epitome of a jungle. And the rule of law doesn't count for anything, especially now that the ICC has been corrupted with this ridiculous politicized indictment.
I know how you feel about the law. I sometimes wish I were a lawyer too, but then I think about it's a lot of work and there's a lot of boring parts to it.
A lot of work, yeah. I watched.
Well, it's not that, well, let me rephrase that. It's not so much that I'm against work. It's that the nature of the work, a lot of it doesn't seem that fun to me. I like to make the big argument. Remember our old pal Jeff Cohn? he used to always tell me that I should have been a lawyer, and he said, "You're not too old. You should, go to law school."
You're never
And
too old.
No, I agree. But then I thought about it. I go, but I thought about like what it would actually be as a job, and
Did you see that movie, Cadillac Lawyer or whatever? Matthew McConaughey.
no.
Yeah, that's
Why would that make me want to be a lawyer or not want to be a lawyer?
No. It's
Okay.
it's.
I saw my
it's
cousin
reality.
Vinny. That made it look like it would be fun.
That would be fun to be my cousin. Vinny. Yeah.
The Lincoln Lawyer?
Yeah, Lincoln Lawyer. Thank you very much. Yeah, Lincoln Lawyer. Thank you, Ann. I called it Cadillac, but I knew it was a car.
It's close.
Close, but no cigar.
All right, let's do one more question. Tristan Van Burkham, thanks for the donation, Tristan. I don't know, what is that currency?
Is the Korean currency the won?
I guess. How do people write that, though? I don't know.
That's
Even
a
the
debit.
euro, look, when I
The
see
think
the
so.
euro, it looks weird. Like, I don't know how anybody actually writes that. It looks too difficult. Anyway, thanks for the donation. We'll assume that's an American currency is about 5,000, I'm going to guess.
No.
Here
I
in
think about $3.99.
All right.
I don't know.
Here in Korea, people seem emotionally attached to the Western narrative, fearing a Russia-China alliance. What would a Russia victory mean for South Korea?
Well, South Korea has become sort of the arsenal of democracy now, because South Korea has an advanced defense industry that can produce artillery shells that are usable on a NATO battlefield. They produce tanks that are sort of like a knockoff of the M1A1, similar capability, cheaper. Artillery systems. They produce a whole bunch of weaponry. And NATO's in the rearming business. And so if Russia wins and NATO makes a decision that they're going to, that they have to double down on stupid and basically, money is the won. Yeah, I think it is. And say, instead of coming up with a peace plan to peacefully coexist with Russia, they're going to continue this aggression. South Korea is going to be one of the major arms producers that are supporting. So South Korea is in the potential of being in this wonderful windfall position where they're going to be making a lot of money off of defense industry. So that's the benefit. But other than that, it's going to mean nothing if Russia wins. South Korea isn't going to be impacted because Russia doesn't threaten South Korea. Russia doesn't threaten anybody except the Nazis in Ukraine. So I just think, as the guy said, that everybody's caught up in the fear about Russia and China, but you don't have anything to fear from Russia or China. All you have to do is figure out to live. Oh, soy boys. Oh, God. Well, I mean, K-pop bands are pretty popular.
Eunuch.
Well, they're not eunuchs. That's not fair. Some of them actually went into they do their military service. They're pop stars, but they have to go do their military service. And some of them are pretty fit, so they're not all soy boys. And I also have to say, I don't like K-pop. It's not my thing, but it is the thing of some people around me. And these people are good. I mean, it's not my kind of music, but the choreography is good. And anybody who dances like that has to have a modicum of physical fitness. So, yeah, they're soy boys. I'm sorry. You're right.
All right.
I was trying to.
You tried, and then this isn't good.
They're soy boys.
All right. But I should mention, by the way, we're talking about lawyers. So we're going to have an actual real live lawyer on our other podcast Sunday, which is Scenes from the Evolution. We do that every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And our guest this week will be Arkady Itkin, who recently interviewed our favorite weapons inspector. And he specializes in employment issues. We're going to be talking about some vaccine cases and some other legal issues. So check us out there. And then let's see, what do we need to remind people about in the world of Ritter? We were going to be in Oakland this weekend, so those events have been postponed. Stay tuned for news on rescheduling them. And Scott will be in Washington, D.C. on the 25th. And we will be in Texas on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. What else, Scott? What else do we have to tell you?
The clock up there. This is literally my doomsday clock. I have set the clock to 30 seconds to midnight.
Wow, what a set you have! I mean, it's actually your home, but it's like
I'm turning it into something. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't take credit because anything that's nice in this house, I didn't pick. So somebody else gets total credit for all the beautiful stuff, but I'm trying my best.
But you attract talent. That's in and of itself worthy of applause.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for being you, Scott. You are still and always my favorite weapons inspector.
I smoke my
Look at that.
peace pipe. This is actually made by the Chippewa Indians in Wisconsin. It's a gift given to me when I spoke at in Wisconsin, but it's a handmade Indian peace pipe. So I have a lot of decorations around here that are pretty cool.
That looks like something that was the January 6th insurrection.
Don't get me tied up in that. The FBI is looking for any excuse now.
All right. Since we talked about Clown World before, I want to close with a Clown World video, and then we'll go right into our closing credits after
Well,
that.
thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Ann, for helping out. Thank you, Jeff.
Indeed. And join us next this Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone.
As usual, we do the lightning round on Tuesday. Scott answers all questions in 3 minutes or less. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll be back here as usual next Friday. Take care, everybody.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like.
Hold on. You wanted to say something, Scott?
Yes, I did. I want to say something.
Don't
Next
worry.
Friday, the 24th, right?
Yeah. So
I'm
when are you going
flying
to
to
watch it?
Washington, D.C. on the 24th. So we have to do it on Thursday night,
I have a pedicure appointment, though, Thursday night.
Saturday night. We can do it remote from my Washington, D.C. hotel, but we can't do it Friday night.
All right. So let's do it either Thursday or Saturday. I could move my pedicure appointment. We'll
I don't
figure it
want
out.
to interfere with your pedicure.
We'll figure it out. But know this, folks, it won't be Friday night. It'll be either
It won't be
Thursday.
Friday night, no.
We'll give you ample notice. Okay. Take care, everybody.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown. I amuse you. It's a clown world, miss. Clown world. Clown world. Clown world.
Come on, man.
That was